Welcome to the Code of Traditional Archery, brought to you by Primitive Stone Archery and the founder, Grant Richardson.
Welcome to the Code of Traditional Archery podcast. I'm your host, Grant Richardson. Welcome to all the new people joining us, and a big thank you to those who've supported us. The Code of Traditional Archery is dedicated to the legacy and heritage of traditional bowhunting and the process of the ethical predator, the silent art of hunting the hard way, an approach that is a journey and skill set, not a product, but a process. This podcast is available on Amazon, Audible, or wherever you listen in. We welcome accomplished bowhunter Mark Sasser to episode 29 of the Code of Traditional Archery. So I want to welcome Mark Sasser to the Code of Traditional Archery. Mark and I have chatted now for at least over several years now since we connected on social media, and I'd like to say two brothers from another mother almost. We've got similar backgrounds in martial arts as well as bow hunting, and I just want to introduce everyone to Mark Sasser. He is a Western U.S. hunter. He's hunted other places, of course. So I'm really excited to have him on and hear his take on the three principles of the Code of Traditional Archery. But before that, Mark, welcome to the Code of Traditional Archery, and just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hey, Grant. So thank you first for having me on. I really appreciate it. And so just so people know, like, we really became friends when I bought your book.
Yeah, right.
And realized that we had all these things in common. And so then we kind of, this friendship blossomed. So it was really cool. And, I appreciate you. So my kind of story is, so I was born and raised here in California, and I had my introductory to archery in the early 80s up at a YMCA camp. And they had the old fiberglass Bear longbows and this little archery range. And I want to say I was probably like in 5th grade. And so for a week, like every day, that was the thing I wanted to do. The activity I wanted to go do is shoot this range. And so then the next summer I went back up there, and the first thing that I wanted to do was go hit that range. And so I did that for a number of years in a row, for like 3 or 4 years in a row, and just really enjoyed it. And there was some connection for me there. My dad, I thought, didn't hunt, but my grandfathers did. Right. My dad was racing pro motocross at the time.
Oh, wow.
And my mom had given him kind of the ultimatum that, like, you can do this or that, but both is too much. So he picked racing, right?
Right.
And so my dad didn't hunt, but we were in the outdoors all the time, cutting wood, riding motorcycles. My grandfathers hunted, so they'd bring deer home and I'd see them and stuff. And there was just something about archery, about pulling that string back and feeling the tension of the bow, and then letting it go and watching an arrow fly, and maybe hitting what you're, back then, maybe hitting something, there was something about it. It just like really hit me, and I loved it. And so I did that for a number of years. And then, I got into high school and was doing high school things. And when I graduated high school, I was in junior college, and I got a job, and there was a guy there that was a bow hunter.
Yeah.
And he shot his name. He's still with us. He's a great guy. His name was Jim Boyajian, right?
Yeah.
And Jim shot a bighorn recurve.
Oh, wow.
And
so that would have been a Fred's personal bows, probably, right? Back then. Yeah.
This was in late 88, early 89.
Oh my God.
So this is curved bed. Like, this is one from Fred, right?
Wow. Yeah.
And, it was signed on the riser. It was like, so custom cool. Bighorn for Jim Boyajian, with G. Fred Eschbauer, right?
Yeah. So
like,
cool.
I get chills thinking about it. Like, I've asked him, like, we've been this 35 years later, I asked him, like, can I buy that bow from you? And he's like, no. He can't shoot it anymore. He's an old dude, and it's like 67 pounds or something. I'm like, can I buy it? And he's like, nope. And so I just please put it in the will for me. I would love to have it.
Yeah.
But Jim had this bow, and I wanted to start shooting. So he sold me a little compound first.
Yeah.
He's like, well, this is easier for people to learn, try this. And I couldn't shoot it at all. Right.
Right.
And I wore glasses and I couldn't see the pin, the target, and all that nonsense. And I told him, I said, I don't understand this stuff. I learned how to shoot with this fiberglass longbow thing.
Right.
He goes, well, I've got this old bow that you're more than welcome to. If you want to learn how to shoot, you can shoot it. And he pulls out like a 1967 Ben Pearson.
Right.
Just gorgeous, high gloss, like beautiful bow. And he pulls this thing out and he goes, I'll trade you the compound for the recurve. I was like, all right. And so I started shooting this, he started teaching me how to shoot this bow.
Yeah.
And along that time, he gives me his personal copy of Instinctive Shooting. Right.
Oh,
he's like, read this book.
Yeah.
Right. And so I started reading it. And the next thing you know, I'm ordering one, of my own and getting, calling to the Aspel home and saying, hey, I want to buy your book, and mailing them a check and getting it. It's not like it is today. Right.
No.
And so I got my own book, and I did that for a little while. And, Jim had gone to high school with my parents and gone to Vietnam and come back.
Oh,
and,
wow.
He was a friend of my dad's, and I'm pretty sure now, all these years later, that my dad probably told him to look out for me. Right.
Yeah.
And Jim took me out and walked me all over the mountains, and
wow.
He taught me. I'm known to be a pretty big practical joker now.
Oh no.
Yeah. It's like, if we go on a hunt together, somebody is probably going to end up with a pink game bag in their backpack at some point. Somebody's going to probably find a soda or a beer in their backpack that they didn't know was there.
Right.
And Jim did those things to me, right? He picked on me all the time. And, one of my favorite stories is we had hiked in like miles and miles on a pig hunt, and we're sitting on the top of this hill, and he's sitting there, we're glassing, and he's like, man, what sounds good right now? I'm like, what's that, Jim? And he goes, man, a Dr. Pepper just sounds like a Dr. Pepper would be really good right now. And I'm like, you know what? Right? Like, man, I wish I had a Dr. Pepper. And he's like, yeah, I wish I had a Dr. Pepper. This whole thing went on for a while. And he's like, why don't you look in your pack? Maybe there's a Dr. Pepper in there. Like, dude, I didn't bring any Dr. Pepper.
Oh, no.
He's like, are you sure about that? And so I open up my backpack and there's Dr. Peppers in there. So Jim picked on me a lot.
Right.
And, it was that some of it was to break the tension, because I probably asked him, like, how much further is it 1,000 times. Right.
Right. Yeah.
But, he taught me how to have fun, and he taught me how just tricks of the trade of, military tricks, which obviously, like, when you go from unnatural light to dark, close one eye, your eyes balance out. All of these little things of how to walk in the dark and how to navigate,
how things are seen.
Everything. Right.
Yeah.
All this stuff that's like exotic now, like land nav and all that stuff. We just did it.
I know.
And this guy taught me that stuff. And along the way, he taught me how to shoot. And, it was at that time, we talked about this earlier, it was all instinctive shooting. It was not shooting for paper. It was shooting to be lethal and getting super close. Right. And Jim was the one, he probably broke me. Right. Because my mom's dad was, I think in Canada, you say First Nations, right? Here we'd say like Indigenous or Native. Right. But my mom's grandfather was my mom's dad was a Native guy. So like my grandfather spoke Native tongue at the dinner table and stuff.
Yeah.
And they always talked about counting coup as like, you had to do this to become a warrior. Right.
Sure.
And so Jim always told me, he goes, you want to, like, when it comes to deer hunting, you want to count coup on them. You want to get as close as possible. And I say that Jim broke me because like there was years like I'm at 7, 8 yards to bedded deer and not taking shots
Yeah.
because I'm like, I got to get closer. Right.
Yeah,
And,
exactly.
now these years later, I enjoy that because he taught me a skill that in modern hunting, guys just, they don't even know that it's a skill, right?
No.
It's this mystical thing.
Yep.
We see videos of like, uh, I'm going to mess up his name, but Brian from Montana, right?
Yeah.
Um, Brian Colger going up and
Yeah.
touching a mule deer, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And like that was the
Yeah.
traditional way was to get as close as possible and then make a lethal shot, right? And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I've always done that. And it wasn't until I started getting older and a little slower that I started taking some further shots
Mhm.
and realizing I could still be lethal. But
Sure.
the game I always want to play is I want to be as close as possible and do that. So Jim was a major influence for me. He took me hunting. He took me to archery shoots. He helped me pick out my first custom bow, and I had it built by Charlie Bishrop back in the day.
Right. Wow.
And he was really my dad in the sport.
Sure.
And because my dad wasn't part of the sport, he took over. And so he's still around. He's still
Wow.
kicking. I message him every once in a while, or if I know where he's camping up in the mountains, I'll stop in and say hi to him.
Nice.
And but that's how I got started, and been playing the same game for 36 years now.
That's crazy. Yeah, my grandfather, he teased me to a point, and I had that grandfather's heritage in the first book. And I took an excerpt of that and sent it to one of our group members in our Trad Bowhunter Ethical Predator community, because he was like, "Oh, I don't think I can hit a deer at 30 yards." I'm like, you don't have to do that. It's not necessary, man. Like it's not. Like it's just not. And my grandfather used to always say, in that chapter I talked about him. He wanted to show me. He was so excited to show me this buck. And I didn't know what it was and he told me, go ahead and make your way to him. And of course I blew it anyway. But that was the beginning of that, what you were saying to me. But he used to say to me, he always teased me. He said, I'd come in from wandering around the woods and he'd say, what did you get besides cold feet and a wet ass? Like as he came home, at that point I was trout hunting, so to speak.
Yeah.
But you applied those things. But like, I talk about it in the book, and I know you've read the book, The Code of Traditional Archery, and I talk about 3 pillars, and those are the pillars I was raised with.
This one?
Oh yeah, right. But those are the first pillar is weapons proficiency, and like I grew up around guys like there's friends of my dad's, and I've talked about this before. They would hunt doves and teal in New Mexico with longbows, like, and people like. And I grew up in a household where my grandfather was a master gunsmith. It was one of his, because back then you had trades. You just did trades.
Yeah.
He welded, he made jewelry, he made decoys and duck calls and wood carved and leathersmith and all that other stuff, apart from his career as a game warden. And it was nothing to me to see that. So, like I used to go around Kempville when I was a kid in the country. We had lots of Hungarian partridge and we had pheasants and that. And yeah, I lost a lot of arrows. But it's funny, I don't remember the arrows I lost. I remember shooting them, but I remember the times I connected were like, it was like magic happening,
Yeah.
And
it is, right?
And that weapons proficiency I talk about with the stick bow is the first pillar. And you've got a really unique perspective. A lot of people maybe don't know yet that you're one of the big parts of Bowhunter bows. And you're not only making these weapons with that idea behind them, right? But you're also utilizing that. And I'd really like you to speak to weapons proficiency, not only from that point of view, but a lot of folks don't realize it's a different ball game, Western bow hunting with a recurve or a longbow. It is not the same as sitting in a tree stand for a whitetail to walk by. I've been out there. I've been out to Alberta, and I had a wake-up call on a chip shot at a 20-meter mule deer above me, and I was fairly proficient. And I went back the next day, and I shot at that target they had there for 24 arrows at an uphill angle, because I was not prepared for shooting across coulees and up a lot of downhill straight down shots or across gaps on rises, because your perception changes.
It
I'd
does.
love to hear those two, both from a bow, a bowyer perspective or designer perspective, but also one who utilizes it, because you're a heck of a shot. And I want you to speak to that, both those sides of that coin. We talked about this a little bit before we started, and
Yeah.
that comparison about pressure and martial arts. Like, I compare a lot of those standard folks to that guy that walks in and said, the jiu-jitsu will never work. I'll see red and you'll be down, bodies fall. Well, no, actually,
Yeah.
that's
No.
not going to happen. Anyway, with that perspective, I've kind of given you a whole bunch there, shotgun, fire hose, but please do elaborate a little bit on that.
No, and I love I love the three pillars, right? And I think it's not presented often enough across the board in our sport, right? Weapons proficiency is probably the hallmark piece, right? It's
Right.
like the you don't pass go until you get this, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And being proficient with your weapon, I shoot just as a hunter, right? And as a lover of the outdoors, I shoot every day that I'm home, I shoot.
right.
Now that might be 10 arrows, that might be 150 arrows, depends on
Sure.
the day and what I'm doing.
Yeah,
But especially if I'm barbecuing in the backyard, there's arrows flying,
sure.
right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so I shoot a lot, and for a couple reasons, right? For the first 30 years of my hunting career, it was all about, I just wanted to shoot so that I had a visual, that spatial awareness, like
right.
like
Yeah.
when we talk about jujitsu, right? You have to know what's happening even if you can't see it.
Right.
And hunting's the same way, right? So it's that spatial awareness of, and you and I started when rangefinders where you had to like turn the dial until the images matched, right?
Right.
The
Yeah.
old school rangefinders.
Right.
Like we
Yeah,
didn't
yeah.
have rangefinders, you didn't have those things. You had to know how to shoot unmarked yardage. And so I really like to shoot that way. And it go back to the book, right? Of G. Fred's book, Instinctive Shooting. People will give him a lot of people will challenge it now because of the snap shooting factor of it.
Mm-hmm.
But it is that shooting a basketball, right?
Yeah.
Steph Curry, Caitlin Clark, they bang threes because they do it all the time.
Yeah.
Right. And so I shoot all the time in realistic shots that I'm going to be doing hunting, so that when I see them or when I'm able to set them up hunting, I can replicate it. Right. And then it's not foreign to me. It's like, oh yeah, I've done this before.
Sure. Exactly.
Right? Now you asked about the Western aspect of it. Like nothing out here is flat, right? We don't have wood lots. We don't have a lot of the things that y'all have back there. But the biggest difference is we don't have the density of game animals that y'all have, right? And so we can't, in most areas, I'm not going to make an absolute, in most areas, we can't hang a tree stand in a corridor and know that we're going to have traffic through there.
Sure.
So it's spot and stalk, or what I've really become proficient at is spot and ambush.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, I'm spotting an animal a long way away. I know animal behavior. I set myself up in a position that I can make the shots that I'm used to. Sure. And then if the animal gives me that shot, I take it.
Yeah.
Right. So, I can't stress enough that proficiency in unmarked yardage, uneven, unorthodox shooting.
Yeah.
For I'll speak to a Western hunter, should be your number one thing that you train yourself to do, right? Yeah. Not shooting indoors at 20, not shooting on the 3D course, all that stuff. Like that's fun. I do that because I am, a co-owner of a bow company.
Sure.
And I want people to, I want to be able to show people, we make a hunting bow, but I can stand here at 20 yards and I can bang,
Yeah.
8s and 9s all day long,
Yeah.
right?
Sure.
I can shoot, 200, I can shoot 280 on a 300 round
Yeah.
with the
Exactly.
hunting bow, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Or I could go on a 3D course. I can do this with a hunting bow. You don't have to have an aluminum riser and an elevated rest and
No.
carbon lamps and all this stuff. But
Yeah.
you can have a hunting bow with wood arrows, or, I shoot carbons a lot too, but,
Yep.
you can have a hunting bow and a hunting setup and be proficient with it.
Yeah.
And a lot of that is for my personal use, but a lot of that also is it's funny, like I like to refer back to Fred Ashbell a lot. Like, I'm older now than he was when he was writing the books that I
That's right.
read and loved,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so I know I've got friends and customers and people out there that are looking at me the way that I looked at him. And, it's my responsibility to pass down that knowledge and
Sure.
help these guys. And so, I think anybody, no matter how you're hunting, if you're an Eastern guy and you're hunting tree stands for whitetails, or if you're a Western guy and you're hunting mule deer or bear or antelope, you need to be as proficient as possible for what you're going to be doing. Otherwise, I'm probably going to get some heat for this. You shouldn't do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You should continue. Hey, you know what? Take another year, practice on the 3D course, get a little
Yeah.
better, right?
Yep. Sure.
Go backpacking.
Yeah.
Don't
Exactly.
hunt, and because I was talking to my daughter's boyfriend last night here at the house, and he was talking about fishing, and we were talking about my recent bear hunt.
Yeah.
And he says, how many bears did you see? I said, well, I saw 44 bears and I
Yeah.
shot the 45th. He's
Yeah.
like, man, were they nice? I'm like, yeah. I said, you can't throw them back.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly. You can't.
And so
No.
it's the ultimate commitment. Right.
It is,
And
yeah.
so, and
Yeah.
I'm a fun loving guy. I like to have a good time, but I'm really a hard ass on this. It's like letting an arrow go at an animal is the
Yeah.
ultimate commitment.
That's right.
Right. And I take it super serious. And, I've made bad shots and I've been
Yep.
torn up about it. Right. I lost a buck on Kodiak because I made what was probably a good enough shot to kill it.
Yeah.
But not before the bears got it.
Exactly.
And it
Yep.
tore me up
Yep.
that happened in 2021 and I'm talking about 4 years later. So
that's why I stopped hunting in tree stands where we
Yeah.
are, because the best area is in the middle of a swamp. But adjacent to that, on where it's like one massive swamp. It's really dense in there.
Yeah.
You'll see, if you're lucky, you sit 5 days, you'll see maybe 3 deer. If you're
Okay.
lucky. We don't have
That's
a big
like California.
population. Yeah, it's not a big population density.
Yeah.
And it was the buck I lost in the book to the coyotes.
Yeah.
It was back in there because it was a higher percentage area. So now
Yep.
I ended up, now I stalk and ambush the edges. And it's funner and it keeps me moving to a certain degree. And I've taken all my deer in the last 15 years that way. I haven't shot one from a blind.
That's
Indy
funny.
was
I didn't know that we had that in common. So
yeah. So Indy and I took the deer I shot with her when she was real little. It was like we had walked into the edge of that old blind and sat there for 20 minutes when I shot that deer. So, I like it. I like to answer people like this. And I talked to this dude in our ethical predator community the other day about this. I said, you need to look at the aspect of your weapons proficiency separate from a shooting or aiming method or shooting process.
Yeah.
I said, in jiu-jitsu, they teach you know the position, hold the position, defend the position, and then submission. If you don't know how to put someone in and hold someone in guard and defend, you're screwed. If you don't know how to frame, if you don't know how to create space, like it doesn't matter if you know 5 sweeps if you can't apply them while someone is pushing pressure on you. So it's like that base position control. Like that's what my archery has become for me now. And so as you know, I can just keep getting better. So I'm in competition with myself.
Yeah. 100%.
More than that other,
the same thing comes with animal behavior, right? We talk about jujitsu and it's like, I know, right? If I'm rolling with somebody and like, again, I really like to have fun on the mat, right? Yeah. And I'll tell guys, I'm like, all right, here's what's going to happen, right? I'm gonna pass your guard, right?
Yeah.
Probably with a leg drag, right?
Yeah.
I'm gonna pass your guard. I'm gonna go to knee on belly. You're gonna defend. I'm gonna turn the corner, and you're either going to give me an armbar or a kimura, or you're gonna sit up. And I'm gonna take your back, and then I'm gonna choke you.
Sure.
And like I know, like if I do this, you will do this, right? If I do this, you're gonna.
Yes. Yep.
This is how you will react.
Yeah.
And animal behavior is the same way. And a lot of guys, and I always tell guys, like when they're asking about hunting and shots, I said, on the mat, if I go into a competition and I said, I hope this guy lets me have his back and I can hit a rear naked choke on him, right?
Sure.
I hope this guy lets me have his back and I can hit a loop choke, right? Or whatever. You're in trouble. And it's the same thing in the woods.
Yeah.
If you go in the woods and you say, I hope, right? You don't want to go in the woods with a quiver full of hope.
No.
And so we talked earlier about how I like to get really close. And my thing is, it's like, if I'm in my head thinking, I think I can make this shot, I don't take that shot.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. And I hunt for a shot, and I hunt for a shot to the point that when I know that it's like so good that the margin of my error keeps going down and down and down, it's like, that's when I take the shot. Right. And there's a lot of times with animals have a say in the game, right?
That's right. Yeah.
There's animals that blow out and I don't even get to take the shot. But you know what? That's fun for me.
Yeah.
It's like, oh man, I like almost got there. Right.
Yeah, exactly.
And there's nothing like taking a big mule deer on the ground out of its bed, and I learned years ago, I used to shoot them when they're still bedded.
Yeah.
And depending on the position, I still do.
Yeah.
But the big mule deer, they're like us, right? They're older dudes, right?
Yeah.
They're older dudes. They've been laying there all afternoon. It's the heat. What's the first thing that I do when I get up from a nap? I'm going to get up. I'm going to stretch. I'm going to go take a leak.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's what they do. They stand up, they stretch a little bit, they take a couple steps, and they piss.
Yeah.
And I shoot them.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And they every time they're surprised. Right.
Yeah. Sure.
But they check their surroundings. They let their guard down. They go over to take a leak, and bam. Right.
It's like that person who's super strong, and you're rolling with them, and you take their back, you get them in a seatbelt, and they're resisting so badly, but they're actually kind of panicking because they don't understand that they're in a pretty bad position. They're not going to muscle the way out of that.
No, you're done.
You're done.
Right.
So
they're done.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting.
Yeah. So then you just wrist lock them to show you, like, I can submit you from any spot. Right.
That's right.
Yeah, no, and it is. And so, I kind of went off on a tangent, but it's like, I had somebody, we were shooting a week or so ago out on the 3D range, and I'm still hunting. I'm still shooting my longbow with my wood arrows. That's my hunting rig.
Yeah.
And one of the guys, we just walked up to a target, and it was pretty far out there. And, I shot it, right? Just instinctive. I shot it, and I made a killing shot on this animal at like 30 yards. Right.
Yep.
And then I didn't have my binos, my rangefinder stuff. And I'm like, oh, it's dead. And they're like, yeah, but that's not in the 10. I'm like, well, what's the yardage?
Yeah, exactly.
Right? That's what I asked them. I said, well, what's the yardage? And they're like, bing, like, oh, it's 30.9. I'm like, all right. And I pull back, and it's like, boom, 10 ring. And they're like, well, why didn't you do that the first time? I said, because I shot it instinctive.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? And I said, and I killed it. And they're like, wow, and the guy asked me, he goes, like the gap for all of those yardages? I'm like, yeah. Like, I'm a professional at what I do. Right.
Sure.
It's like, that's the proficiency part. It's
exactly.
Like, and so I carry a rangefinder, and I've been given some grief about it over the years, but it's like, if an animal allows me the opportunity to use it, I'm going to use it. If they don't, I'm either going to take a shot or not take a shot based off of my proficiency.
Exactly.
So, there's no level of proficiency that is too high. Like
No.
we were talking about Hickson, right? You're
Right,
gonna say
100%.
that Hickson doesn't need to learn anymore, right?
People don't
He's got hip
understand the
issues,
fact.
back issues. He's still
No,
learning.
and they don't understand when like a guy like Hickson is getting you in cross-eyed, it feels like there's 1,000 pounds on you. Like they
Yes.
don't get that. It's
Yeah.
like you don't have any space. He's
Yeah.
taken away any space. There's no space. And you're being
No,
told to
none.
shrimp and create space and frame. And you're like, I
There's nothing
feel
you can
like
do.
someone drove a truck on top of me. And
I
he's not even
explain it.
submitting you. Like, and that's sort of
No,
that
he's not.
that's
And
that
you want to
space I
tap.
talk about pressure with bow hunting. That's why I relate to it. Because
Yeah.
unless you drill with flight time,
Yes.
you're not gonna get it.
You
Like
have a better
there was a guy
chance.
giving a crap to one of the Wensels shooting at a running deer at 12 yards today on social media somewhere.
Really?
At a running deer, and he pinwheels it
Yeah.
beautifully between the heart and the lung.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, that was so unethical. And I'm like, I wrote in, I'm like, you don't understand how many arrows that bow has shot
Yeah.
to make that shot.
Yeah.
You don't get it. Like,
well,
and that's where the second principle pillar comes in, which is ethics to guide us. That goes hand in hand with the weapons proficiency. So
100%.
that's where not to cut you off, Mark, but that's where I'm going with that, right?
So yeah, and the ethics ethics is, again, like, and here I'm going to backtrack because I said like weapons proficiency is kind of like the number one thing.
Yeah.
But I already talked about it where I said like, hey, maybe you should work on shooting for another year before you hunt, right?
Sure.
And there's no shame in that.
No.
The ethics of it, it's like I have as a younger man made ethic choices that I'm ashamed of, right? Mm-hmm. And not that I did anything illegal or anything. It's that I pushed that envelope where I think I can make this shot, right? And I did it, I did it in front of my first wife, right?
Yeah.
And as she was watching me hunt, and she's back there watching me, and I want her to see me be successful. And I had a nice buck at 8 yards, and I just wasn't quite sure on the shot. I was still young. I was in my mid-20s, and I was waiting for the right shot, and the wind changed a little bit, and the buck ran out to like 25. And so then I know she's watching, so I shoot.
Yep.
Right. And I skinned its brisket. Right.
Right. Yeah.
And it tore me up. I go back and I tell her, I said, she goes, I saw you shoot. And did you get it? And no, I don't think I did. And I went through all the reasons why I didn't think I did.
Yeah. Yeah.
And she says to me, she goes, well, why didn't you shoot the big one that was right below you? And I was like, what?
Oh, no.
And she's like, oh, there was a really big one, like right below you under the ledge. Yeah. That was like right under. And so there was a huge buck that was probably like 3 or 4 yards away from me. I didn't even know it was there. Right.
Right.
And so, it's like we make these choices. And had I been more aware of my surroundings, more aware of what was going on, like I knew how many deer were in the group because I had seen them before I started the stock.
Yeah.
I knew the big deer was in that group. Like,
sure.
My ethics, I say that I was morally corrupt, right? Because I wanted to be successful so bad.
Right. Yep. Yep.
He's watching me, right? Yeah. And you'll see where I'm going with this in a second. Like I wanted to be successful so bad, and she's watching me, that I didn't think it through as well as I would have today. Mm-hmm. And I ended up taking a shot that I would not take today.
Right.
And I had a bad experience from it. Right. Yeah. Well, now you compound that today with with social media, like guys are seeing success, like out of a fire hose all day long. Success.
100%.
Right? YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, like you can find success videos out there all over the place.
Sure.
unfortunately, there's not the footnotes to it of what
No.
it took to get to there, right?
Sure. Yep.
And especially with the equipment that we use.
Yep.
And then on top of that, it's not your wife that's watching, it's, you know, a million trad hunters across the States and Canada
Yep.
are watching, right? And unfortunately puts pressure on these younger guys that they want to be successful so bad.
That's right.
That they do one of two things. They either they either take morally
Sure
in the balance shots
questionable,
right?
Sure,
questionable, right? They either take questionable shots filled with hope, or they give up the sport that you and I both love, and they go to other methods, whether it be an elevated rest and string walking, or a compound, or a crossbow, or a rifle, or whatever. They just give it up instead of staying the course. Like, you know what?
Right.
This is the equipment I'm going to use, and this is why I'm going to be proficient, and I'm going to have great ethics moving forward in it. And, you know, I think I'm a very, very ethical guy, and I still have wounded animals, right?
Sure.
It can happen. The opportunity, wounding an animal doesn't mean that you have poor ethics, right?
No.
It just means that you're playing a high level game with a better opponent, right? These animals are better at everything they do than we are.
Well, that's exactly what you talked about before we started. We talked about that white belt mentality versus the black belt. I remember Carlos Machado saying to me one day, "Be like a rope."
Yeah.
Relax. Because I was like,
relax, be loose.
Right. And you talked about that white belt mentality versus the black belt with that higher art, right? Through pressure.
Yeah. So
that white belt that's struggling and
it's like
kind of
white belt jiu-jitsu, right? White belt jiu-jitsu is a lot of movement without very much technique.
Yes.
And a lot of that movement comes through panic, through anxiety, through pressure, right? Yes. And then black belt jiu-jitsu is not a lot of movement, but a lot of technique.
Right.
And that happens because you don't have anxiety, right? The pressure, it could be physical pressure, it could be psychological pressure. It doesn't have the same impact on you because you've been there before, you've done it, right? You have your proficiency and your technique, you know, and you know, hey, if I don't get the tap right now, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Right? It doesn't matter. We're not, you know, we're not fighting to the death, which in bow hunting you are, right? And so
that's right.
You know, and so as we get better in this traditional bow hunting game, like we should be using more technique with simpler game plan, being simpler equipment, right?
Yep.
A traditional bow shooting off the shelf with simple arrows and using a lot of technique to fire that arrow proficiently and ethically to get your game. That's how I see it.
One of the worst roles I ever had was with a Marine hand-to-hand combat instructor that hated jiu-jitsu. And it was in a massive, I was in the Sierra Nevadas. It was a retreat that my instructor had, PFS had. And this guy'd show up. Oh my God. And he and I were training earlier that day. Roy Harris had been teaching most that afternoon. Roy was a very physical instructor. He would get in there and show you the arm drag, like right there in the sand. Right. So that night, he kept trying to pick me. Finally, I go with this guy, and I kind of had him in half guard. Somehow he got into side control. He was very muscular, very big, very strong. Yeah. I thought my head was going to pop off. And it was the very first time, and I just got my purple. Yeah. And I kind of, everything kind of relaxed. It was like slow motion almost. And I remember framing, and I got enough space, and all of a sudden I had his back. And he was trying to buck me off like a horse. And I'll never forget that. And my friend that was with me in the background was screaming, "Grant!" Because they thought that he was trying to kill me. Like the look on his face, he was really angry.
Yeah.
And I remember getting the choke in. He got in a little hand fight for a sec, and then I sunk it in, and I just relaxed into him, and he started gelling, and everything changed. And now I've had some experiences with bow hunting very similar to that, and it's like that. I say it like this all the time. They call it a struggle stick, but we don't call
Yeah.
driving a vehicle a struggle car,
Yeah.
right? Or like I like to say when people are doing bow hunting and jujitsu, it's like driving a car. You're doing 5 things at the same time,
Oh yeah. Or
but
more. Right.
you wouldn't call it struggle jitsu, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I know I'm kind of being a little metaphoric. I get that, but I
No,
think
but
that
I like it,
but that really struck me what you had said about that white belt versus black belt thing, and that that higher level of
yeah.
development and process. I don't feel like I carry a struggle stick around.
No, me neither. And it's funny, like we talk about the guy that comes into the gym and he's like, oh, I'm a street fighter or I'm this or that. And like this jujitsu won't work on me. It's like, okay, like
Yeah.
let's roll. Right. And you go when you roll with them and they're doing all these non-jujitsu things and they're trying to pop your head off in a headlock and all that stuff. And it's like, oh, so I guess I should tell you now that like I can fight the way that you do also and use jujitsu.
Jiu-jitsu, yeah. Yeah.
And so it's, next thing you know, you've got them in a heel hook or a toe hold or something. And
Right.
they're
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
hey, I could make you limp for the next 30 years. Right. It's the same thing. Like when we're shooting, I have it a lot of times with compound guys. They'll be like, oh, well, you guys have to shoot from the trad stakes. And it's like, oh, okay.
Right.
No, I don't have to. Like, I like
Sure.
to, but let's shoot from the compound stakes. But you're
Yeah,
going to
yeah,
shoot
yeah.
how I want to shoot. Right.
Yeah.
And you make a compound guy turn his third axis, he's done. Right.
True.
And so
True.
I shoot from the compound stakes all the time. And guess what happens? Except for the extreme long distance stuff,
Yeah.
I score just as well as those guys do.
Sure.
And it's like, okay, now, like, now let's have a conversation about why this happened. Right. And I do this with my students as well. It's like, I may submit you, especially like if a visiting student comes in and they're kind of being an asshole and you gotta
Yeah.
go, and sorry for cussing there, but
No. Yeah, I'm tracking. Yeah. Yeah.
and they're kind of being that way and you kind of have to be the enforcer, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I do that all the time. It's like they're like, go roll with Mark, and you find out like he's old. He'll take care of you, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Kind of tune him up a little bit, and you're like, okay, well, why did this just happen to you, right?
Yeah,
I do the same thing with my kids, right? Why did this just happen to you? And so the same thing happens in archery community. It's like, okay, so let's if you really want to learn, let's talk about it. Like, why did you shoot that animal high, right? Or
sure.
What happened? You've got a compound with sights and a release and all that stuff. Why did you shoot this? Why did you shoot that arrow this far to the left or right? Oh, well, were you paying attention? Which were your toes pointed up, or were or were your toes pointed up or your toes pointed down? Because it throws you off, right? There's levels to this game. And so if all you want to do is walk around and stand upright with your feet in a perfect position and shoot, great, that's cool.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen in the woods, right?
No.
And there's a difference between single string archery and traditional bow hunting. Right?
100%.
And they're not the same people. They're not the same sport. They're both cool. I like people in both.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But it's like you have to know. And so when I go to these tournaments and stuff, I take my hunting weight bow most of the time, and I shoot like a bow hunter. And my hope is when I go to do those things is that somebody out there will be like, hey, you know what? I don't have to use all of this gadgetry, right? If he can do it, I can do it. And that's what Fred did for me when I read his books, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
This guy's out there hunting the world, being successful, and he's doing this. Not that I shoot exactly like he did, but the thing that really stuck with me wasn't that I had to shoot like he shot my entire life, but I wanted to have the adventures that he had and have the experiences he had. Like one of my favorite chapters in his books was he was talking about being on the sheep hunt when he got the stomach bug.
Right. Yeah.
Right. and he ended up having to hike out. Go to, like, unfortunately, I've had a similar experience to that, right? And the nice thing about it is, it's like, well, this happened to him, right? So if I wonder if I hiked out and went bought some yogurt,
Sure.
feel better, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So there's these men that went before us,
Sure.
right? That did these things, and we're blessed with that, right? And I hope where we are in our careers now, in our lives, that we can help the younger guys.
Well, it's funny, you say that, because my closest experiences to being who I really am, who really truthful to myself, have been either on the mat or bow hunting.
Yeah.
Or, apart from marriage. I'm not going to throw the wife under the bus.
Yeah.
Very real there too. But that's my point, though. Like, I can't think of any other things that really brought me there to that level of reality and connection. And that speaks to the last point. I've got a few minutes left here, but it's that conservation stewardship. You already talked about it. You said your future son-in-law, maybe. I just had to take a shot at you, Mark, because I'm going through that too. So ha. So anyway, but that being said, you talked about, you said to him, how many bears did you see? Well, I pulled the string. I let the string go on that conservation and stewardship, which goes in hand with the other two. Give me a couple of shots about that before we wrap up.
So, I think it's important. I think I didn't really get into it until I was probably 45 years old, right? So I'd been playing this game for a long time, been in the sport for a long time, been in the woods for a long time with a lot of experiences. And it's okay that you're there, but you come to a point where it's time to start the stewardship part of it. It's time to start passing these things on. And so, like, with my son, who's 27 now, and I gave him a bow off the wall, I'm like, pick one, right?
Oh, wow.
I told him, you can't have this one, you can't have that one, any of the other ones, whatever you want.
Sure.
Cameron was 9, and I took him on his first backpacking trip in the wilderness.
Wow.
Made him pump water, made him cook food, right?
Yeah.
And he's 27 now. He just summited Whitney, which is the highest point in the continental U.S., right?
Wow.
And he's an amazing backcountry hiker and would-be hunter. Yeah. And I have told him for years, you don't start bow hunting until you have all of the pieces of that puzzle. So that's the stewardship part. And then, I got involved with the California Bowman Hunters State Club years ago.
Yeah.
I'm on the board of the California chapter of the American Bear Foundation.
Nice.
And, the political climate, I always say, like, Instagram and the social media is kind of a detriment to hunting. Yeah. But it's also, and we just saw it here in the States. Yeah. With Senator Mike Lee wanted to sell off public lands. Yeah. Like, in the 1990s, that would have gone through. Wow. There would have been no resistance. Sure. Because people didn't know. Yeah. And so, we have this opportunity now. We have a tool that we can use. And on the conservation side, right, I think we owe it to my kids, your kids, and future grandkids and beyond to protect this thing. And there's preservationists who want to just stop everything and just preserve it, and then there's conservationists. Right. I'm going to be on the conservationist side, and I've got to a point in my life where I don't need to hunt for food anymore. Sure. Yeah. Right. I can afford to go out and buy whatever steaks I want. So I enjoy wild game, and I hunt for that. Like, I won't pull the string back on an animal that I'm not going to bring home and consume. 100%. Right? Yeah. And there's guys that are, and hey, if that's you, that's cool. But like, I just went to Manitoba, and on my bear, I brought it back. Yeah. Right. And there's guys that don't. for whatever reasons. And
Yep.
I brought mine back. I picked it up from the meat cutter today. And,
Nice.
I have a bunch of bear meat that will feed my family and my friends and for more than a year.
Of course. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And, and then through that, you get to, when you break bread with people, you get to know them better. And then
Yeah, of course.
That's where the conservation, the stewardship comes through is a really like, not just showing them. I can have stewardship through showing that I'm weapons proficient.
Yeah.
I can have stewardship by and work conservation by showing my ethics. But the conservation piece where I went and I harvested, I killed an animal. I don't like to say harvest. I killed the animal.
Right.
I harvested its meat.
Yep.
Right. And now here it is. And I'm going to cook it and present it in a way to you that is amazing.
Exactly.
And,
yeah.
The people really like my mother for years was the first time I made her venison hamburgers. We're sitting around the table and my dad's like, "Oh, this is a really good burger. What is it?" And I was like, "Oh, well, this is venison, right? It's the mule deer I killed a couple weeks ago." And my mom stopped eating, right?
Right. Yeah.
And she had this visceral reaction to it.
Sure.
Now she comes over to my house and she's like, "So what is this?"
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Oh, well, this is a wild hog, or this is venison, or this is, lingcod that I caught out in the ocean, or, whatever."
Yeah.
And people aren't necessarily very polarized where they're anti-hunting, pro-hunting. Most people are in the middle.
Yeah.
And so as hunters, part of that stewardship isn't, a lot of times on social media, we talk to the people that are already in the same choir that
100%.
Right?
Yep.
And stewardship and real conservation happens when we bridge that gap. Right.
Sure.
And so for me, one of the best ways to do that is with food.
Yeah.
Right.
That's amazing.
And because then people will ask you, they're like, oh, this is bear. This is really good. I didn't know that bear was good. Well, it is if you prepare it in these ways. Oh, well, where did you get it? Oh, I went to Canada. And oh, tell me about that. And then you start telling about the adventure aspect of it, right?
Sure.
And the process and how long you work on to do it. And, people actually start falling more and more and more. And they're like, oh, okay, well, my wife will tell you this. Like Alicia would say, like, I never thought I would marry a hunter.
Right.
But if I knew that there were hunters like you, I would have never thought that.
Right. Yeah. Sure.
And so we have to not put on a show, but we have to be real, right?
Yeah.
We have to show people that this is the way it is, and this is who we are and what we do and why. And, we're good at it. And then, one thing that I wanted to share real quick, and to not part of the pillars, but one of the things that I think is really, really cool is the bow. I don't know where it is. I think it's this one right here.
Yeah.
The one that I built this spring for this Manitoba hunt, right?
Yeah.
I've got people all the time at the bow company. They'll ask me, hey, well, will you make me a bow out of G5, right? Or G10, sorry. Will you make me one out of G10 or micarta or this, that? I'm like, I could. I don't like it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, why not? I'm like, well, there's just other things that are cooler out there. So this bow is desert ironwood, right?
Right. Cool.
Which a lot of people don't know about desert ironwood, but it's an exotic wood.
Yeah.
And it's very, very dense. It's very, very hard. It's very, very heavy.
Right.
So it is equally balanced with G10.
Right. Tracking. Yeah.
However, right, G10 is just fabric and glue. This desert ironwood, it's protected species, first off.
Right. Yeah. Right.
So it's illegal to harvest it while it's alive. Gotcha. Right. So you can only harvest desert ironwood after it's dead and on the ground. Right. Well, what's the average lifespan of desert ironwood?
Oh, it's probably a long time.
800 to 1600 years.
That's crazy.
So think about that, right?
Yeah, that's amazing.
And so this is where I get romantic and I get really passionate about it and why we do what we do in the bow company. Yeah, I
Yeah.
can build something out of G10. They
Sure.
made it 2 weeks ago in a factory in China,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
This thing, like we buy this wood, right?
Yep.
That some little dude down in the desert of Mexico or Southwest America went out
Yep.
and he cut it and he milled it, and we
Yep.
bought it from him.
Yep.
And then you sit there and you've got this block of wood that you turn and you look at it, and you imagine what's in there,
Sure.
and you build a bow with it. I built mine specifically for this bear hunt in Manitoba, right? So it's purpose built for me. Every single thing about it was with that hunt in mind.
Yeah.
And now I'm carrying this bow that was a living thing
There's a soul in that bow.
before Europeans discovered our continent.
That's crazy. Yeah.
Right.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like, okay, so tell me that there's not a connection, right?
Sure.
So people talk bad about Hunter, right? Oh, these guys are just out there. No, right? They're not. Like, tell me there's not a connection to the land, to the fauna, the flora and the fauna. And, I created this thing. And Jerome told me, like, used to build most of my bows for me in the shop.
Yeah.
I'd just be like, dude, I just want it. Just build it. I don't have time to go up there and do it. He's like, you need to build this one yourself. Right. And so he did some of the details for me and he finished it for me. And he's like, it's going to make a bigger difference to you when you shoot that bear with the bow you built. Right.
Yeah.
And so I built this gorgeous bow out of this ancient piece of wood.
Yeah.
And, it wasn't the biggest bear. Like my buddies shot some Manitoba giants. I shot a big bear.
Yeah.
Right. Made a beautiful shot on it with a wood arrow out of a bow that I built out of a tree that was 800 years old, probably at the minimum. Right.
Yeah.
That's why I do what we do.
Yeah.
Right.
That's cool.
And then, and then I get to go to the meat locker and give them $350 American for a big old box of meat that now I can, I can hit up the barbecue.
Yeah. That's amazing.
That's why I do it.
Yeah. That's awesome, man. That's great.
Yeah. It's fun stuff.
It is.
Right.
Man,
we're really lucky that we
yeah
live where we do and get to do the things that we do. We're really blessed.
It's true. I've had more people listen to me, even if they didn't invite me to hunt, and talk to me when they realized I bow hunted with, and I've got a recurve I haul out. Oh no, we've had some bad experiences. We don't want to talk about them. I was okay. I hunt with a bow though, like a stick bow, like a recurve. Oh, what you want to? And we get into conversation. And once they see that and they hold that wood and they look at it, it's like it's another.
Yeah.
It's not like it's not a weapon to them. It's a piece of artwork. It becomes something more functional.
Yeah,
right?
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah.
And it's fun. A couple of years ago, I shot one of these big bucks that's on the wall up here.
Yeah.
I shot it on a military base, and I took it into the check station, and they're like, "Oh man, this is the biggest buck we've had this year." I'm like, "Yeah," and they're like, "Yeah," and I was like, "Oh, that's awesome." And the guy looked in my Jeep, and he's like, "Wait a second, you shot that buck with that bow?" And I was like, "Yeah." Like, "Can we see it?" And I'm like, "Sure." So I pulled it out, right? And I shot it with one of my longbows that I built, a one-piece longbow, and they're like, they couldn't get over it. Like, "You shot that buck with that bow?" I'm like, "Yeah."
Yeah.
And, I shot it at like 28 yards, which was my point on, right? So it was like, big deal. I was like, point shoot. But they just couldn't get over it.
No.
And they were like, I guarantee you at least one of those guys, young military age guys, went and hit Google on like, what is a longbow or something.
Exactly.
Right.
For sure.
So, that's fun for me. Right.
Yeah, that's hilarious. Yeah. The last time I had the conservation officer, was several years ago, and I shot a fairly large whitetail the second last day of our gun season, and there was a crew way on the other side of my parents across this creek, and there's no one around me in the back end. They weren't doing any drives. They were sitting that day, and I shot this buck, and I knew I'd hit him really well, and I called my buddy. Look, can you meet me halfway and help me finish dragging him out? Because there's a mess in here. So he got to me already. I dressed it, and he got to me. So we drag it out, and he had his pickup. So he we put on the back, skid it up to the pickup, and these two guys come by. They were at the train tracks about 2 miles down the road. They come around, they turn around, slow down. They see these antlers, and my Damon Howell was sitting across the back of the buck, and they turn around, and the one guy, you see him talking like this, blah 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 blah, and they turn around again and come back, and they did 3 circles. So we get to my dad's house, and I got to get the block and tackle to hang the deer, which is their old farm is not far from where we're hunting.
Okay.
20 minutes later, the CO's truck rolls up. Hey, how's it going? I'm like, good. You got your blaze orange on when you're in there? I'm like, yep. You hunting with a bow? I'm like, yep. What kind of bow? I'm like, this bow. And he's like, well, those guys didn't think you were allowed, because we're allowed in our rifle season. We can hunt with a bow. You just got to wear blaze orange.
It's the same here. We don't even have to wear blades. But
so anyway, he's like, oh, can I come and look? I'm like, sure. It's just, we just got up on the block and tackle. It's hanging. Oh, you killed that deer with that little thing? He says, like, I'm like, yeah, I've killed quite a few deer with that little thing, actually.
It's funny. People think it's funny, a toy, right?
They do.
And like, I had one,
crazy.
We were at a shoot. We had our booth set up, and I had a really gorgeous bow. Like, we have a model called the Royal Safari. We build one a year. Wow. Jerome has one. I have one. Yeah. And then there's like 4 or 5 guys that have one. Sure. Like globally. Yeah. And, but I thought it was cool. I put a fluorescent pink string on it. I had arrows that were like a white crown and like pink feathers and stuff. And there's a guy there, and he's looking at our bows, and I had my bow that's hanging up there, and it's black and white ebony, beautiful bow. Wow. And he's like, "Oh, is that a girl's bow?" And the way he said it, I was like, I'm like, yeah, you should try to pull it back. Like they think they're toys, right? Yeah, or they're like for kids or stuff. And I was, and I don't know if it just rubbed me the wrong. Like, I don't know if he was being sexist or misogynist or whatnot, but I'm like, yeah, you should try to pull it back. And I looked over at Jerome, and Jerome was just like, oh, it was a 60-pound recurve. Yeah, exactly. And he's like, 42, 43. He goes and pulling. Oh my God. And they're like, what girl shoots that? And I'm like, I do. Right. And I'm like, why did you think it had to be a girl's bow? Because it had a pink string on it, And so Jerome still picks on me because it's a girl's bow now. Right. But I just thought it looked cool. Our neighbor who shot a 65-pound compound cannot pull Indy's 43-pound recurve back. And she was shooting at it when she was 11 and a half, not drawing 40. She drew into the draw weight legally. She was probably shooting 38 pounds back then. Yeah. And now, like, he couldn't believe it. He was like, what is it? I'm like, it is what it is. Yeah. I let people shoot my bow all the time. The compound guys would be like, can I try shooting that? Sure. Yeah. And they're like, oh my God. Yeah. Yeah. Well, you shoot that thing really good. Yeah. It took me 35 years to learn how to do that, but we can teach you. We can get you in about 3 months. We can get you proficient. For sure. And I always tell people and the only thing I'll say and I've had a great time talking to you, is people don't understand, apart from all of it, they're so fun to shoot. They're so fun to shoot. Yeah. They involve so much of your own personal input. It's so, your own individuality is so ingrained in them. They're so fun to shoot. I've never gotten bored. No, never shooting them. You can't get bored shooting them, right? And I'll throw the jujitsu thing in once again. Yeah. Shooting a trad bow and just even flow rolling, right? If you're rolling jujitsu or shooting a trad bow, you better be thinking about that one thing, or you're going to have a bad time, right? You start thinking about, dinner or the dog or whatever. Yeah, exactly. Or you're going to miss, right? Yep. So you really have to. The reason I say that is it allows you. There's not a lot of things that we do anymore that you have to be that present to be good at. Exactly. And so it allows you to like shut everything out. Yep. And do this thing, and it's really fun. Whether you make a great, like on the 3D course, whether you make a great shot or not, you can have fun, but you have to be present to do it. Yeah. Right. 100%.
It's
That's
been
all
great
I'll say
talking to
on
you,
that.
Mark. You
It's
got a
fun.
YouTube channel people should know about?
Man, yes,
Are you on there? Are you active?
very little.
Buona
We have
Bows?
we have a Buona Bows
Yeah.
channel that's
Nice.
just got like a couple of bow builds and stuff on it.
Nice.
There's not a lot on there. And then
Yeah.
I have my channel, which is the California Trad Bowhunter channel.
Yeah, yeah.
And there's some stuff. A lot of it's like how do you pack your pack, or
Nice.
more of the process of things.
Sure.
There's some
Yeah.
hunts on there. There's some shooting on there.
Yeah.
Not a ton. Most of what we do is on Instagram.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we've got the Buona Bows page,
Nice.
which is just Buona_bows.
Yep.
And if you go there, you're gonna see bow builds from like our base level bow that's like $900
Yep.
to these wild, super exotic bows. And the cool
Cool.
thing about our bows, is, I'll plug it real quick, is we use the same exact limb profile for every model. So you can buy
cool.
a $900 Hunter
Yeah,
or a 2000 plus Royal Safari.
yeah.
If they're recurves, they're going to shoot the same. If they're
Nice.
longbows, they're going to shoot the same.
Nice.
And so our bows shoot extremely well. So if you go to Buona Bows on there, you'll see all kinds of crazy builds. And we really like to show the build process from a block of wood through, hey, here's a finished piece, right?
Yeah, that's so cool.
And the steps along the way. Other guys do that, like Derek DeRusa is doing that.
Mhm.
Some of our friends out there, they're smaller builders, they do that. So we do that. And then on my page, the California Trad Bowhunter page, it's more of the lifestyle and the nonsense. It's me taking crazy shots, or doing a tournament or a hunt, or just the nonsense, kind of the fun side of it. So yeah, you can find us on both of those. We're
Cool.
equally on Facebook under both of the same things. So
Awesome, man. Nice chatting with you, Mark.
it was great. I really appreciate you giving me the time to get on here.
Yeah, I promised you a while ago. I finally got around to it. Yeah. Yeah.
That's the right time. Is what it happened at the right time.
Right on, man. Thanks
Bye,
again,
brother.
Mark. Cheers.
Thank you. All right. See ya.
Thanks for joining us. We are the Ethical Predator, a hunter who values the heritage of hunting the hard way. You can find us at the Trad Bowhunter Ethical Predator community. Join for free and be a part of a new worldwide movement of traditional bow hunting, and support the heritage of the silent art of hunting with traditional gear with your own contributions. The link is in the comments, and I'll see you there. Thanks for listening in. We encourage you to immerse yourself in the art of the stick bow, shoot straight, and walk the path of the ethical predator.